Hello everyone and welcome back to MoTut's Motion Made Easy. My name is Jon Navarro and today we are bringing you another motion title tutorial inspired by the re-release of the Justice League, the Snyder Cut. I don't know why I just said it like that, but something about that guy's last name just makes me want to say the Snyder Cut. That guy's got to have the coolest Jewish name I think in all of Hollywood. So anyway, let's get started. This one's pretty simple, straightforward. So we're going to start by opening up a new motion project. Make sure we're at broadcast HD 1080p. Set our frame rate to 24 frames per second. We're going to keep the duration at 10 seconds. Click open. So let's go into our first group. We're going to rename this group background. And what we want to do is we want to put a texture in this group. So let's go into library, let's scroll down to content, and then search for metal. And we want to add this metal PNG, click apply. And let's just make sure that we fit everything into view and also hit Shift V so that we can see anything that falls outside of the preview boundaries. Let's go into the inspector now and let's go into the properties tab and let's just reset the scale to 100. All right, now what I want to do is I want to turn this texture into a monochromatic version. So let's go into library, go into filters, color, and we want to colorize. Let's click apply. Now let's go into the inspector and we want to remap this to white. And then what I want to do is I also want to go in and I want to add a brightness filter and I want to turn the brightness down. Last filter I want to add is a contrast filter. So let's select contrast, apply that, then go into the inspector and let's increase the contrast until we get something like that. That looks good. So now that we have our background layer done, we can lock this off. Let's create our title group. So rename this title and let's click our text tool. We're going to create 3 text layers. The first text layer is going to be the DC shield. So to create this, we have to download the Justice League font, which you can get from thefont.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. And the second font was one that I created custom, which is for the shield because I couldn't find that in any font library. And I will include a download link to that in the description below as well. So first, the DC symbol. Let's click Option, Star. Click out, select the text tool again, click in the window, Shift J, that's going to be for the shield. Click out, click in again, select the text tool, and now we'll type our text, Justice League. Now, to get the carved out star between the I and the C, we have to use a special symbol. So you're going to click Option, Hashtag, and Option $, and that'll give us the star symbol in the middle over here. Now that we have our 3 text layers, let's select all 3. Let's go into format. I want everything to be centered. Let's go into properties. Let's reset the position. So now everything is centered. Let's turn off the other 2 layers. Let's just work on the DC layer for right now. And what I want to do is I want to go into the text and I want to go into appearance and I want to change this to 3D text. Now I'm going to change the substance. We're going to go into metal and we want this to be distressed metal. Let's go into format. Let's increase the font size. I think 300 will be good. And let's go back into properties. And what I want to do here is I want to shift the anchor point. So let's shift the Y 150 and the Z 150 as well. Now let's go back into the text. We want to adjust the appearance. So for the depth direction, we want that to be forward. And for the front edge, we want to change that to ridge. We want to make the depth 20 and we want to make the front edge size 10. We want to go into the lighting now. We want to switch the lighting to diagonal left and we want to increase the intensity to 200. And we also want to change the environment. So click show and let's change this from field to lightbox and we want to check self shadows. So now that we have the DC layer done, what I want to do is animate this. So let's go into properties. I want to click the record button. I want to create a keyframe for the position, then go to about 3 seconds on the timeline, hit O for out. That's going to be the end of the animation. And then let's just move this forward in Z space. We'll say 300. We'll also add a behavior. We want this to fade on and fade off. So now if we go back and we play that, comes on, comes off. Boom. Done. So now that we have that done, we can move to the shield. So let's select the J. Let's turn this layer on. Move the playhead to 3 seconds. Hit I for the endpoint. This is where our shield animation will start. And then same thing, we're going to go into the text. We're going to turn this into a 3D layer. Let's turn record off. And same thing, we want the depth to be 20. This time we want it to stay centered. And we're going to change the texture to metal, grunge metal. Go back into format. And I want the size of this to be 600. We're going to change this to the custom font, which is JL Shield. It's the one I left in the download link for you. And we're going to change the anchor point. So let's move the anchor point to 300. That looks good. So let's go back into the text. Let's go back into appearance. And let's change some of this stuff. So we're going to keep the depth direction centered. We change the depth to 10, the weight to 0, the front edge to square, and everything else stays the same. Now, same thing here. We're going to change the lighting to diagonal left. And we want to go into the environment. Let's turn on self shadows and go into the environment and change this from field to lightbox. So now that that's done, we're going to animate this. So let's turn on the record button. Let's go into properties. We want this to come from off screen. We want it to land at about 8 frames into the animation. So create a keyframe for your position at 308 frames. Go back to the 3-second mark. And on Z, let's do 2400. So now if we play that through, boom, that pops on. At about 4 seconds, we want our Justice League title to come on. So let's turn this on. Let's hit I for in. Let's turn off the record button. Go into text. Let's go into format. And let's scale this up to, let's say 250. All right, that looks cool. Let's go into the properties. We want to shift the anchor point, 75. Nice. Okay, cool. Now let's go back into the text and let's adjust the appearance. We're going to make this 3D text again. And we're going to keep this centered. I'm going to make the front edge 10. And I'm going to keep this square. Let's go into the material, go into metal. We're going to change this to old steel. So now we want to adjust how this appears. So let's open up the options for the old steel. We want to change this to all. There we go. And instantly you see how that affected the text. All right. If we go into our lighting, again, turn on self shadows and go into the environment, and you'll see that this has the field, and we just want to switch that to the light box. So let's increase the brightness for this to 200%. Right. We want it slightly brighter than the background. Actually, let's crank this up to 300%. All right. And so we're pretty much almost done. So what we want to do now is we want to animate this part of the title. So we're going to go into behaviors, text basic, and fade characters center in, and you'll see our characters fade in. Boom. We want this to be pretty quick, about 1 second. So we can bring this to the 5-second mark. With the behavior selected, just hit O for out. And now if we go to the beginning of our timeline and just play this through real quickly, we have our DC shield comes on, Justice League shield comes on, text comes on. So we're pretty much done at this point. The last thing that I did here is I created a particle emitter with some dust particles just to kind of fly in front and kind of look like burnt ash. So let's create one more group. So rename this particle group. And let's go into the library, and we want to go to content, and we want to search for dust. We're going to select the dust to PNG and click apply. Go into the inspector. Now click the dust and hit E for emitter. So now we have our emitter. Let's go to the beginning of the timeline over here. Let's hit I so that the emitter goes the entire length of the animation. And what we want to do here is we want to go into the inspector, select the emitter. We want to change the shape from point to rectangle. We want to change the arrangement from tile fill to random. We'll twirl open the size parameters, and we'll change this from 1920 to 1080. We are going to make this 3D, and then let's just click the properties. I want to scrub through this real quick. There we go. So you see these particles kind of pop on very randomly. We're going to change this. Let's scrub to the middle of the comp just so I can get a better idea of how this stuff looks. And let's go back into the emitter. And now from here, you're just going to play around with the settings until you get something that you like. What we could do is we can make the longitude 90 degrees. We can keep the emission range at 360, or you could say maybe cut it in half and make the emission range 180, and you'll see how that kind of makes the particles go from right to left. We want to click on interleave particles, and for the birth rate, we really don't need this much dust. So we can make the birth rate 2. You just need a couple to float around. We can make the birth random 3. We can leave the life at 5 and set the life randomness to 6. Let's increase the speed to 150 and the speed randomness to 100. Now for the angle, we can do an angle of 15 degrees, an angle randomness of 90 degrees, a spin of 30 degrees, and a spin randomness of 180 degrees. Let's turn on additive blend, and we want to change the color mode from original to overlife, and then we want to change the color gradient to Smoky Mountains. So now you see it looks a little more kind of like smoke ash particles. Now let's go into the scale. We're going to crank this way down to 10, and we're going to make the scale randomness 20. And that's about it. Now let's go back to the beginning. Let's just play this through, and you'll see these little dust particles floating around. Let's actually increase this birth rate up to 5. Let's put a couple more in here. If you want to make these dust particles even more visible, we can add a filter. So we can go into the library, filters, clear out the search, and we can go into glow, bloom, and apply a bloom filter. Now in the inspector, what we can do is increase the brightness to 90 and decrease the threshold to 30. Now you'll notice on some of these, as the light hits it, gets a little bit brighter. And then the last thing I want to do with this emitter, I want to change the transfer mode. So let's click on the emitter, go into properties, and for the blend mode, let's make that overlay. All right guys, the last thing we need to do here is add a camera. We want to keep our particle layer and our background layer locked, and we're going to add our 3D camera. So let's add the camera, switch to 3D. So the only layer that's going to get changed to 3D is the title layer, and that's for a specific reason. You're going to see why right now. We'll say at about 8 seconds, we're going to create a keyframe. So let's click on record. So let's double click the position tool. That'll create a position keyframe. We want to go to about 9 seconds and 12 frames. And now what we want to do is we want to push in on Z. We're going to drag this camera tool down to push in. And we want to go straight through the star. So let's just move this over a bit and down till it looks like it's about center. That looks about right. And just keep dragging this through until the star clears the frame. We'll say that this is minus 2300, and we'll say that this is 15. Let's turn off the record. Let's go through. Let's play this back. So we have our DC logo, which comes on, fades off, our shield slides in, our title appears, particles float around, and then boom, we're out of here. So that's it guys, that's our Justice League title tutorial inspired by the Snyder Cut. Feel free to play around with this and make any additional adjustments that you'd like just to make this your own. You could add a vignette if you want to change the look of the background. Again, this is where you can allow your creativity to flourish. So there are no rights or wrong here. There are no rules. Just do what you like. That's what makes this fun. I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to check back in with us on Mondays for our Motion Mondays. And we're going to be changing our tutorials to Tuesdays. So Mondays will be our Motion Demo Mondays, and Tuesdays will be our Title Tutorial Tuesdays. So that's going to be our new dates. Again, my name is Jon Navarro. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to click like and subscribe. And we'd love to engage you in a conversation, so don't forget to leave your suggestions in the comment section below. Let us know what you thought about the new Justice League, the Snyder Cut, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.